Welcome, my favorite audience members, to another episode of the Cortado Conversations. I want to start by breaking down the fourth wall for just a minute. In that, whenever I'm talking to a guest in advance, and there's always some humorous anecdote or some connection or some story that I think kind of ties together everything we're going to be talking about. My guest today has such an incredible background, has done so much, is a thought leader in the space that I literally just threw my hands in the air and was like, I got nothing. She can tell her story far better than I can. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Lai-DuMone. We had the pleasure of meeting at an Authentica conference called The Summit a couple of weeks ago. And as we were sharing a ride back to the airport, I just unabashedly asked, I have to have you on the show. So with that said, the stage is yours. Tell us about you, your background, and let's see where this goes.
Sure. Yes. And I'm so glad we had that time together because the summit was such an amazing experience and everyone there was worth knowing. Right. And the fact that we got an opportunity to sit at the lodge afterwards and then get in a car together and have a further conversation was really wonderful. And we found a lot of nice common connections. Okay, so about me, let me just go way back. The story you're
Please.
telling about my past, I believe you're talking about the fact that I am a Vietnamese refugee. So I came here in 1975, the fall of Saigon. I was just a baby. I was only 2 years old. So I spent a lot of my life telling this as my parents' story. And
Mm-hmm.
only very recently, over the last 10 years, maybe really owning it as like, oh, wait, no, that was my story too. And it really has formed a lot of my life, that experience, and all the experiences from there. So when we first got here, our first home was at Camp Pendleton Marine Base in San Diego, and the servicemen and women there had, I think, less than 24 hours to prepare for the arrival of 18,000 refugees.
Wow.
So talk about like my work in creative leadership. So I talk about like creative leadership. This is the first time in American history. Um, you know, military bases had housed refugees, so they had to figure this all out and quickly. And then after that, we were transferred to a refugee integration center up in Northern California called Hope Village, and
Mm-hmm.
it's there that civilian volunteers came and helped us. And one of the volunteers, named Tippi Hedren, who's a famous movie star, came up there, volunteered, and she volunteered to help these women find a career in their new country. So she started typing and sewing class. My mom joined as Tippi walked around the room, encouraging them. They were curious about something completely different. They were curious about Tippi's long red manicured nails. And
Interesting.
Tippi really could have just said, thank you so much, keep typing, keep sewing, but she didn't. She paused and she paid attention to that curiosity. And they started asking, well, what if we could become licensed manicurists in the United States? So one small step after another. Eventually, they ended up down at Citrus Heights Beauty College, going to school there, despite the fact they didn't have money to pay tuition, despite the fact that most of them didn't speak English. They got it done, right? They overlooked those challenges and they focused on the possibilities. So from that, they went to school 10 weeks, 400 hours, and they all passed their manicure practicum and written test in English. And they became the first 20 licensed Vietnamese manicurists in the United States. I love
Wow.
telling that story. Yeah, because it's just like, and I heard all my life, right? My mom would tell me like, oh, stop telling that story, right? It's like in adulthood, I realized the impact of that story because Tippi wanted to help these 20 women, but it's now an $8.3 billion industry.
Yes.
And thousands and thousands of Vietnamese Americans have been able to create a life for themselves and their families through that industry, all from this woman, this movie star, taking the time to empower other women and taking that pause to pay attention to a curiosity and take action on it. Which
What I
leads me to,
oh,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
don't mean to interrupt, but
No.
what I love about that, and I'll use the movie phrase, the origin story there, is if you think about it, in basically less than the course of a lifetime, there's the joke almost all, there's a Vietnamese nail salon on every corner. You were there at the start of that, back when it wasn't even a concept. And one woman taking time literally spawned an industry. So I love that story for so many different reasons.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a beautiful story on so many levels. And I look at my work now. So my work is in team and leadership development through creativity and curiosity. So when I started telling my mom's story, I told on a TEDx stage, and when I was writing the TEDx story, the TEDx talk, I just told my mom's story, and I had someone look at it. They're like, "What's the through line? Right? What's the idea we're spreading? The story is wonderful. What's the idea we're spreading?" And when I really looked at it, I'm like, oh, there's a framework here. There's a framework to follow your curiosity, right? The framework is we in all our busyness is to pause and pay attention to those ideas that tap us on the shoulder. The second thing is to ask those powerful questions despite the challenges. Ask the questions like, what if we do this? How might we do this? And then take the action on just one small step, take that action. And, in writing that text, I'm like, oh, I've been following this framework unintentionally my whole life, getting me to what I'm doing now, which is, I started this business called worksmart Advantage about 10 years ago when my son was 1 year old. And I don't think I knew what it was going to be. It was literally like, okay, I have this idea that keeps coming to me. So what if I started it? What would that look like? And I had all these ideas. And I just started with one idea and I took one small step. And the first small step was I had these backyard parties in backyard art and crafts party where I did workshops called like Weave of Dreams, where we talk about your goals, your ambitions, your dreams, and then weave them into a yarn hanging. And then because thinking impossibility, I'm like, oh yeah, I can certainly bring this in the corporate world. And I was sort of approaching corporations like, no, we don't really need that. And that's why I pivoted to is okay, how can I bring creativity, curiosity into the workplace in a way where there's a return on their investment, right? Where is this going to make sense? And that's when I attach creativity to learning and development.
Interesting. So I find it so interesting that your business started because this isn't my favorite phrase, but it's accurate. You ate your own food. A chef who eats their own meals. You took your own
Mm-hmm.
inspiration and then found a way to turn it into a corporatized, in the positive sense of the word, concept.